decreased productivity, burnout, strained relationships, physical health issues, mental health issues, lack of work-life balance, poor decision making, lower retention rates, negative impact on creativity and innovation. Do you know all these problems are related to one thing? Yes, that one thing is workspace stress and anxiety. So today we will discuss in depth about stress, anxiety, its nature, its fundamental problems, its solutions, tips and hacks that you can implement in your day-to-day life. All that we will discuss in today's episode and two or three upcoming episodes as well. Holistic Happiness Club, where happiness is not just a choice, not just a mental state, but a lifestyle. And I'm your host, Akshay Tiwari, a holistic happiness coach, an author, a public speaker. And I will take you to this journey, this discussion about workspace stress, about its problems, its solutions, and all the other things. So without further delay, let's dive into the topic. So before we get into the actual problem, I want to discuss about one thing, that why I wanted to address this problem as the first problem. And there are two reasons for that. Reason number one is personal. And the personal reason is that because I am also an employee, I am working as a senior software engineer, and I have been in this industry for more than a decade. And trust me when I'm saying that I have been under tremendous stressful situations. And in those situations also I have been regarded as a most calm and composed person who can handle stress very well. And the reason for that is because I have learned from many masters. I have learned from my own experience also. And those teachings which I have been fortunate enough to receive, and which I could also cultivate my own selves, I want to spread those teachings to everyone. And by the way, how I came into this space and how I learned what I learned, we will discuss these things in some other time. Okay, so this was the reason number one, which was personal. All right, let's move to reason number two. Reason number two is even more exciting. So reason number two is that we all know that India is booming, and in few years from now, we will see that India has a huge, enormously huge working class. And if these problems are not addressed from the beginning itself, then what we will see that India is going to fall into the footsteps of the West, where there are a lot of mental health issues. These mental health issues can cause friction between employee and employer, that can decrease the productivity and all those problems which I just stated, right? Personal problems, then physical health issues and other things. And all these things does not create an asset. All these things create an empty person who is working like a machine, who does not produce good result. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for individual. It's not good for family. It's not good for society. It's not good for company as well. So what we don't want that India should go into that space. So that's the reason number two. I want to do my bit. I want to provide my 2 cents to address this problem from the beginning itself. All right. So let's move to the next thing, which is understanding stress. So we need to understand first, before we understand that what is workspace stress and how to manage and all, we need to understand what stress is. And from the beginning itself, I want to clear that stress is not all that bad. Stress itself is not a negative thing. Stress pushes us out of our comfort zone. That's how I will define stress is. That stress fundamentally pushes us out of our comfort zone. So now let's pause this discussion of workspace stress and the problem and all this. Let's go back to 20,000 or 30,000 years back, when humans were hunter-gatherers. Think about what were the stressors then. There were maybe two kind of stressor, or maybe very few stressors. Let's talk about two. One was that when you are chasing an animal for food, when you want to hunt down an animal, or maybe when a tiger wants to hunt down you for his food, right? So those kind of stressors were there. So what your body does at that time, it raises your blood sugar, it raises your blood pressure, it raises heart rate, it provides you enormous amount of energy and concentration so that you can save your life, right? And it happens for a brief period of time. Once you are safe, once you are hidden away, once you are out of the sight of the tiger, once you feel that you are safe, your blood sugar comes down, your blood pressure comes down, your heart rate comes down, and other systems which were a little secondary to saving your life, they come back alive, like your digestive system and other thing, which shuts down for a brief amount of time when you are under stress. So those were the stressors 20,000, 30,000 years back when there were not a lot of things. So you see, stress saved your life at those on in those times. And this is how we have been evolving as a human being. Now, this corporate has come like in 100 years or 200 years or so, right? So, what are the stressors in today's lives? In today's life, in corporate life, I'm talking about. So, the stressors are that excessive workload, maybe organizational changes, feeling of lack of control over your own decisions because somebody else is making decisions for you in the corporate world. Those are the stressors, right? So, and these stressors, unlike the tiger, which goes away in few seconds or few minutes, these stressors stays there for a long time, right? And that is why we are talking about managing the stress in these situations. Because stress for a brief period of time, it can push you out of your comfort zone and it can produce wonderful result. But when it prolongs, imagine that your BP and your blood sugar and your heart rate is raised beyond a level for prolonged amount of time. Imagine that the tiger is chasing you for like hours. What will happen? Body will eventually give up, right? So in those situations, we are talking about managing the stress. So stress itself is not all that bad. Point number one. Point number two, when stress is prolonged enough, we have to manage it to protect our own well-being. So this is what we are talking about, managing the prolonged stress, because that can be detrimental to our health, right? All right. Now let's understand what are the fundamental things, what are the fundamental problems or the changes which can occur that can cause stress. So these are the fundamental things which can cause stress in a corporate life as well as in the personal life. But what we will talk from the perspective of the corporate life. What is the first thing? The first thing is constant fear or uncertainty about future. Right. So when we are constantly thinking about the future, and in today's era, when economy is not that certain, the war situation and other things has created this uncertain situation that when company will start laying off, when company will start firing employees, we don't know. So in this uncertain situation, when we are constantly thinking about those situations which we do not have control over, that causes stress because that kinds of a scary scene with what will happen to our job, what will happen to the EMIs and all the other things which are running through the job, right? So when we are constantly thinking about those negative scenarios, that causes the stress. All right. Now let's come back to the point number two. Constantly regretting or lamenting about the past. So the problem number one was about the future. The problem number two is about the past. So just like future, we do not have control over past. Whatever has happened has happened. What happens sometime that we all make mistakes. We all do terrible things sometimes, or knowingly or unknowingly. But But sometimes we are not able to move on from there. And when we are not able to move on from there, what happens that this event keep on repeating in our mind, and our mind does not know the difference between the reality and the imaginary things. So when we repeat the same incident which has happened in the past, what we do is we are recreating those scenes, and we are reliving that stress of that particular moment, right? So as of now, we are talking about this, the fundamental categories, fundamental problems of the stress, fundamental things that causes stress. We will come back to the situation later, right? All right, so this was number two. Number three is attitude or the perception. Your attitude towards a certain situation decides how much stress you will feel towards that situation. I'll give you an example. Let's say two people go to an interview, A and B, and both get rejected, right? Now, person A is thinking, "Oh, I'm a loser. This happens to me all the time. I do not get selected. I'm not good enough." And when these things he is repeating to himself, he is thinking that he is the culprit. He is the problem here, and that causes a lot of stress. Also, and then a related scenario comes into picture. I will not get the job, and then how will I pay the bill? How will I provide for the family? All those things that adds to the stress again. Now, person B, who is also rejected, by the way, he is thinking, oh, this company does not know how to recognize the talent because I'm good, I'm damn good, but this company does not know how to recognize the talent. That's why they have not hired me. Or maybe he's thinking, okay, this company has a different requirement than my skill sets. My skill sets are different. I'll go to a different company where my skill sets are required, my skill sets are respected, where I can excel, I can contribute to organizational growth, and in turn, that's how I will add to my own growth. So this person is person B. This is also rejected. This guy is also rejected, but he is not thinking from a victim's perspective, and he's not adding a lot of stress to this situation because his perception to the situation is different. Here, I'm not saying that you should not be responsible for your action. That is a completely different topic we can cover some other time. But what I'm trying to say that your perception decides how much stress you will feel towards the situation. All right. The next one is unrealistic expectations. See, Mahatma Buddha says that expectation leads to sorrow. So you should not have any expectation from anyone. That's what Mahatma Buddha says. But in our day-to-day life, that's not that practical. So we should minimize our expectation. That's one thing. But we should not keep unrealistic expectation at any cost. So if we are expecting from our subordinates that that someone person will be awake whole night and they will complete the whole task for us, maybe we are expecting a little bit too much, right? And when that expectation is not fulfilled, that causes disappointment, and that causes stress. All right, so let's move to the next point, that is change. So when there is a change of any type, either good or bad, studies have shown that when people go through marriage and when people go through divorce, they experience same kind of stress. So, because it's just a change, it's a change in their relationship status, whether they are going to a marriage or they are going to the one is positive, you can say, another one is negative in our social setup, but it causes a similar amount of stress to the individual. So, any kind of change, good or bad, that adds to a lot of stress, and that again, it comes from our evolution. So, if you will go from your house to a new jungle, you will always be alert that who is coming from behind and who is ahead of you because you are in an unknown territory. So any kind of change causes a lot of stress. All right. So these are the fundamental five things which I could think of that causes stress. All right. So far we have discussed that why we are discussing this topic and what is stress fundamentally, what kind of stress we are talking about to deal with, and what are the fundamental things that causes stress, right? Now let's talk about what is the importance of addressing this problem, right? So we are talking about right stress is this, stress is that, this causes stress, that causes stress. But what if when we will eliminate or minimize the stress, what kind of things have will happen? Meaning, what kind of impact this will have? So so there are multiple things which will happen. And by the way, we are talking from the perspective of employee and employer corporate perspective. That what all the changes we will experience, corporate will experience, or the employee will experience. So the first thing they will experience is the personal well-being. Multiple studies have shown that if a person is working in a less stressful environment, the person is more will be more mentally healthy, physically healthy. And when a person is physically and mentally healthy, that person is an asset to the family, to the company, to himself. That person can be more productive. That person can be more creative and contributing. That person can contribute a lot more than in the situation where he is stressed a lot, right? So the first benefit which we get is the personal well-being. The second benefit, as I think I've already covered, the productivity and the performance. When the person uh, work in a less stressful environment, see, the key to note here is that we are not talking about a stress-less environment, because stress-less environment may cause to decrease the productivity again, because as I said, stress is something which pushes us a little bit beyond our comfort zone. And when we go beyond our comfort zone, most of the time we do good things, right? So little bit stress, little bit push is needed. What we do not need is prolonged stress. That we do not want employees to be under stress, performing under stress throughout the year, throughout the month. Maybe a day or two is fine, right? So that's what we are talking about. So productivity and performance enhances when people are working under a less stressed environment. Okay. So the benefit number three is collaboration and teamwork. Right? So when a person is in a stressful environment, the person tend to get into a shell because he needs to protect himself. He needs to complete and complete the task which he is assigned to. He will not be able to collaborate. He will not get time to work in a team player manner, right? So, and we all know that teams perform better than individuals. So, if we want our employees to perform in a collaborative manner in teams, then we have to provide them in a less stressful environment, in a little bit cheerful environment where they can mingle, where they can talk together, where they can build interpersonal relationships. Uh, on on the basis of what? On the basis of them, they will discuss among each other and then they can collaborate, right? Benefit number four will be work satisfaction and retention. You see, if the person is less stressed, then the person more likely will be satisfied with the work. And when the person is satisfied with the work, then he will be he will be an asset to the family as well. And when he is an asset to the family, so here we are talking about work-life balance, right? So the employee is satisfied from the work side. Employee is because he is satisfied from the work side, he could contribute a little bit more time to his family. So he is balancing family and work both. That gives him work satisfaction, and that when the work satisfaction comes, the employee does not think of leaving the company. That increases the retention rate, and that increases the reputation of an organization as well. So it's good for our organization too, not only for employees. And this is exactly what we are talking about, organizational reputation. When people are working in a less stressed environment, cheerful environment, when people are happy and employees are happy, they not only perform better, but it also adds to the reputation of the organization. So that's additional benefit for organizations to take care of mental well-being of the employee, to take care that their work environment is as less stressful as possible. Remember, we are not talking about eliminating the stress. We are talking about the minimizing. We are talking about minimizing the stress so that people can perform to their optimal levels. So there have been multiple studies regarding on the same topic, that a less stressed environment, work environment, what benefit it can provide to employee, what benefit it can provide to employer, and whatever just I have just talked, and these are all studied, these are all well documented. I have just picked a few of them just to provide the reference. So there is one study. It's titled as Work Stress and Employee Health by Arnold B. Baker and Evangelia Demarotti. It was done in 2007. This study highlights the detrimental effects of work stress on employee health, including psychological, physical, and behavioral outcomes. It emphasizes the need for the organizations to address and manage workplace stress to protect employee well-being. So this was just one. Another one is there, the relationship between workplace stressors and post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. It was a systematic review and meta-analysis by Amanda L. Botti, Daniel W. Russell et al. It was done in 2020. This analysis examines the connection between workplace stressors and symptoms of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. The findings suggest that exposure to workspace stressors can contribute to the development of PTSD symptoms. That this is serious. And this study emphasized the importance of minimizing the stressors and providing support to employees. There is another study titled as Work Stress and Employee Burnout, a cross-national study by Christina Maslach, Susan E. Jackson, and Michael P. Leiter. It was done in 1996. It was a cross-national study. It explored the relationship between the work stress and employee burnout. It reveals that the high level of work stress are associated with the increased burnout rate. And this study also emphasized that the importance for organizational support and intervention to prevent the burnout among employees. So these are just a few references which I have used to provide the information which I just provided right before that. All right, let's move to the next. All right. So we have discussed that stress itself is not that bad. What we need to do is not to manage every single bit of a stress, but we want to manage the prolonged exposure of the stress. So how do we know? How do we know that we are exposed to the stress for a very long period of time, which is not good for us, right? So, so one thing is that the best thing is that we should be listening to our own body and listening to our own mind. If our body is saying that it's enough, I cannot take it anymore. If the mind is saying that I cannot concentrate anymore, I'm done, then maybe it's the time that we should manage that exposure to the stress. But in our demanding work environment, what happens that sometimes we lose the touch with our own voice. And in that times, these signs and symptoms can help us to recognize that whether we are it is too long exposure for us to the stress, and maybe it's time to manage that stressor, right? So maybe we can look out for our own self, maybe we can look out for someone else, maybe someone else can look out for these signs and symptoms inside us, right? So I have categorized these signs and symptoms in few categories. So the number one category is physical symptoms. So when you are under stress, then it is very evident that physical symptoms, some or the other physical symptoms will be there, right? What can be these symptoms? This can be fatigue and low level of energy, frequent headaches, muscle tension, digestive issues. As I said that when you are under stress, when a tiger is chasing you, then what happens that body shuts down the digestive system, because what it needs to do, it needs to provide you the energy, it needs to provide you the ability to concentrate on something. So when there is a stressor, digestive things become secondary, sleep becomes secondary, reproductive system becomes secondary. First thing becomes that how can I provide the maximum source of energy and maximum source of concentration so that the person can perform optimally, right? So the changes in appetite, increase or decrease in the appetite for no reason, that can be the sign that you are an prolonged exposure of stress. Sleep disturbance, maybe insomnia, restless sleep. So all these are symptoms, physical symptoms that you are exposed to the stress for a very long time. Now it is time to manage that stressor, right? Second is behavioral type of symptoms, like feeling irritable, moody, or someone when someone is easily triggered by something, increased sensitivity or emotional reaction, maybe something which you do not like, but maybe you do not react that much in a normal scenario, but when you are under stress, you will react a little bit too much to that particular thing which you do not like. Difficulty in concentrating and making confident decisions. So these can be sign of stress, a lot of stress, exposure to prolonged stress, lack of motivation, lack of interest in work, withdrawing in a shell, not talking to anyone, avoiding social interaction. All these are the sign that you are under a prolonged exposure of. Then the next kind of symptoms are mental symptoms. So, the mental symptoms can be unnecessary worry, or maybe thoughts one after the other when they are coming to your mind, and they are, I mean, it's called when mind is racing through the thoughts, right? So there are when there are a lot of chain of thoughts which is unending, and maybe when you are all the time thinking of the worst case scenario and worrying, and when you do not have the self confidence, if you are feeling overwhelmed and heightened self criticism, and when you are talking negatively to yourself, all these are mental symptoms uh, of prolonged exposure of stress. And maybe it's time, if you are feeling any of these, maybe it's time that you should take. Next is interpersonal. When you start getting tips in your interpersonal relationship, in your family, or in your with your colleagues, right? So that can be because that you are prolonged exposure of stress, right? So if you have increased arguments, and if you are trying to avoid social gathering, and when you are feeling that nobody understands you, that you are trying to be outside of the party, and you do not trust anyone in your vicinity. So these are the interpersonal symptoms that you need to look out for when you are looking that when you are trying to find out whether you're prolongedly exposed to the stress or not. Okay. And the next and the last one is the physical and mental health changes, right? So, physical symptoms, I mentioned that digestive issues, right? Headaches, all these things, and some internal things also, like elevated blood pressure, heart rate, burnout symptoms like emotional exhaustion and breakdown. All these are the symptoms, um, the changes in your physical and mental health. These things are trying to tell you that it is enough, and it is now time for you to take care of yourself, right? All right. So these were the signs and symptoms. I think we have covered enough for one day. And in the next episode, we will look for the problems. What are the problems in the workspace, in the workplaces, which an employee faces that causes stress, and what are all the solutions for them? And we will also look out for some tips and hacks in the next episode. So stay tuned, and you can also connect with me on Instagram. My handle is Happiness Architect. You can also join my VIP Facebook group, where once we are connected socially, you can ask a lot of questions, and I will be very, very happy to answer all of those. So thanks for staying tuned till the end. And the best thing you can do is share the word with others, like, subscribe, tell others that about this information if you found it useful. Thanks a lot. And till the time we are seeing each other next time, till the time we are talking to each other next time, see you. Bye bye. Peace.